or his property. Ideal for what we hear next.
And does he work in your community?
Yeah, he's a woodsman.
Now, the detail about woodsmen is, I think, quite interesting because back in the medieval world, woodsmen or wood wards occupied an important part of medieval society. Although peasants were free to go and help themselves to wood from the forest itself was owned by the local gentry and managed on their behalf by the wood ward and his men. So clearly this is a guy who could have some status, and that all fits quite nicely with the idea that he might have taken on Alison's peasant not as a wife, but as a concubine. So for me, this growing picture of the medieval world is bolstered by what we now learn about the man who owned the forest.
Who owns it?
Earl somebody, I don't know his name. And he comes past, kind of surveying all that he owns, and that includes the people as well. We weren't free.
So the man that owns the forest and the castle is an earl. Well, this is quite good news because the title earl is a serious medieval position. Earls were appointed by the king to look after his affairs in each of the counties, and it certainly gives us a very early medieval feel for this story. But before we finish it off, there's one more detail to check out. Something about apples.
Apples, rows and rows of apples.
And where are the apples from?
They're in storage. They're from the orchard, from this wood.
Now, apples, of course, have long been a feature of the English landscape, but what struck me about what Alison said is that she said there were lots of them, and under the Normans, apple production goes up because they had a liking for cider. In fact, they established huge orchards dedicated to producing nothing but cider apples and introduced many of our now most famous varieties. For example, the pearmain, first recorded in Britain in 1204. Now, understanding Alison's regression, to be honest, has been quite tricky, but the detail she did give us, I think, has painted a picture of life in medieval England sometime after the Norman conquest, maybe even the 12th or the 13th centuries. But to be honest, it's hard to say for sure, but has it been enough to convince Alison that she was here before?
I don't think it's going to take very much to convince you. But now you've added, we've added that extra sort of level of detail. How does that make you feel?
The concubine bit's a bit, ooh.
What do you know about that?
I didn't know anything about it.
Nothing
I
at
mean,
all,
that
concubinage and...
doesn't mean anything to me at all. And I had no idea, as me today, that a woodsman was higher up than, obviously, myself, the peasant girl. And yet I didn't feel like his concubine. I didn't feel like his, you know, he owned me. I felt like he loved me and he was a good husband.
Let's talk about the very beginning of the story and that feeling of family. You've written very publicly in your autobiography about your upbringing and the fact that you were brought up in institutions. That moment of being taken away from the family, held in a castle, there is the parallel there of being institutionalised, isn't there?
Indeed, indeed. I mean, maybe that life taught me maybe how to cope with being separated, because I'd already experienced it, because I think I've coped with it amazingly well in this lifetime, really.
Well, you said right at the end of that life can be difficult but fulfilling. I mean, you've proved that 10 times over in this life, haven't you?
Indeed. To have a disability, that's it's a huge thing to take on, and I do believe that you have a choice about when you come back how your physicality may be as well. And to choose to come back like this is, I think you've got to be quite a strong character, and maybe previous lives have given you that kind of grounding, if you like, and experiences to be strong, because it's not easy to be disabled, even in this, day and age, I have to say.
Well, let's talk about that physicality, because obviously in that past life, as Helen, you were able-bodied. So what does that feel like?
It was peculiar, because I can remember looking down and looking at my hands and my bare feet. It was quite exhilarating to experience being able-bodied, and boy, did I work hard in that life.
Yeah.
I mean, real physical work that, as I am today, there's no way I could possibly achieve.
You've already told us that you do feel constant pain.
Oh, all the time. I have a nagging pain. I can't even put it into words to describe to you what it's like all the time.
Yet, for 4 hours after that regression, you said you didn't feel any pain.
I didn't take any painkillers until I went to bed. And then it was just kind of, oh, in case.
What did that feel like?
That was an amazing feeling. It was very freeing, actually.
So is it something that you think you would pursue?
Absolutely, definitely, because I'm trying to pursue every avenue, you know, with my pain management that I possibly can, because I'm sure there's something that I can find that will work for me. And I don't expect it to go away forever, because there's no such thing as, you know, I don't think cures like that, but something that would help me to be able to function.
It's a fascinating story. Do you think it's more than a story? My final question to you is, obviously, do you think you've been here before?
I really do, yeah. I think to take on the body that I've chosen now, and my whole attitude towards it and the way that I cope with it, I think you've got to be pretty well have, you know, experienced a few things before to do this.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you.
So there you go. Alison thinks there's no doubt she's definitely been here before, but what do you make of it? That's all for now. Next time on Have I Been Here Before?
A Knight's Tale. A swashbuckling romp through a medieval life. A love lost. Duty first. Romance forbidden. But whose past life will it be?
The more I look at this regression, the more I'm getting a sneaky feeling that we could be on the trail of a seriously historic figure.